The universe had always looked down on humanity, weak, primitive, fragile. That's what the Galactic Council labeled them after Earth was discovered. Aliens passed by the blue planet, snickering at the so-called sentient apes who couldn't even escape their own gravity without risking their lives. The Council saw Earth as insignificant, not worth the effort to conquer or even acknowledge. That was until the Drakthar came. The Drakthar were ruthless conquerors, known across the galaxy as brutal warriors and cunning tacticians. Their fleet descended on Earth without warning, massive warships blotting out the sun, their engines rumbling like thunder. In a single day, major cities were reduced to smoking ruins. New York fell first, then Beijing, London, and Tokyo. It wasn't even a war, it was a slaughter. The Council watched from their luxurious stations, sipping exotic drinks and exchanging bored looks as they monitored the broadcasts. Earth's defenses were a joke. Primitive nukes, fighter jets, and soldiers armed with bullets. The Drakthar cut through them like they were nothing, leaving corpses and rubble in their wake. Aboard the flagship Blood Vengeance, Commander Krazul stood on the bridge, his crimson eyes fixed on the earth below. A low growl rumbled in his throat as he addressed his second-in-command. "Pathetic," he sneered. "These humans are barely worth the effort. We shall take their resources and leave their world a burning husk." His lieutenant grunted in agreement, but there was something gnawing at him. "Commander, some of the troops report resistance, pockets of humans fighting back. Nothing significant, but persistent." Krazul waved a clawed hand dismissively. "Let them fight. Their defiance is amusing, but it changes nothing." He didn't know it yet, but that persistence would become the Drakthar's downfall. In the shattered remains of Chicago, Sergeant Alex Reyes crawled through the wreckage of what used to be a hospital. His leg was bleeding, his armor scorched, but his grip on his rifle never wavered. Around him, the few survivors of his unit huddled together, eyes haunted but determined. "They hit Atlanta too," Corporal Darnell said, his voice tight with grief. "Whole place is gone. No word from the East Coast either." Alex forced himself to stay calm. "They think they've already won. That's why they're not bothering to wipe us all out. They're underestimating us." Private Chen wiped blood from his face and gave a bitter laugh. "They have ships the size of skyscrapers, Sarge. What the hell are we supposed to do?" "We hit them where it hurts," Alex said, his voice steely. "They're used to fighting organized armies. They don't know how to deal with guerrilla warfare. We go underground, regroup, and strike when they least expect it." It wasn't just empty talk. Across the globe, human resistance started to take shape. Leaders, soldiers, engineers, and civilians formed networks, passing intelligence, coordinating strikes, and learning the weaknesses of the Drakthar war machines. One critical discovery changed everything. The Drakthar's energy shields were vulnerable to specific radio frequencies, destabilizing them for precious seconds. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Humanity began to strike back. In Mumbai, an improvised rocket launcher took down a patrol ship. In Berlin, underground fighters lured Drakthar soldiers into a trap, collapsing buildings on top of them. The message was clear. Earth wasn't conquered yet. Commander Krazul, unaware of the growing resistance, lounged in his quarters, confident in his victory. He didn't notice the silent transmission that hacked into the ship's systems, planting a virus that would soon turn their own navigation against them. Alex Reyes watched the explosion in the sky, the flagship suddenly veering off course and colliding with one of its own cruisers. The Drakthar on the ground panicked as their chain of command fell into chaos. Grim determination hardened Alex's gaze. "They struck first. Now it's our turn." The world burned, but from the ashes, humanity's spirit burned hotter. And this time, Earth wasn't going down without a fight. Commander Krazul's body slammed into the metal floor as the flagship shuddered violently. Sirens wailed, and the harsh red glow of emergency lights bathed the bridge in a bloody hue. He pulled himself to his feet, rage contorting his face. "What in the name of the Black Star just happened?" he roared. Lieutenant Varrock stumbled forward, gripping his bleeding shoulder. "Commander, the flagship's navigation systems have been compromised. We collided with the Iron Maw. Primary thrusters are offline." Krazul lashed out, claws raking across the console, sparks flying. How? How did this happen?" Varrock hesitated. There was an unauthorized data stream from the planet's surface. Some kind of virus. It corrupted our flight path. Krazul snarled, his eyes blazing. "Humans! Those wretched vermin think they can fight back? Crush them! Deploy ground forces to every resistance hotspot and burn them to ash." Varrock hesitated again, fear crawling into his voice. "Commander, our communications are disrupted. Some kind of electromagnetic interference from the surface. We can't coordinate our forces." Krazul smashed his fist into Varrock's jaw, sending him sprawling. "Then fix it. I will not be humiliated by insects." Meanwhile, far below in the wreckage of Chicago, Alex Reyes couldn't help the triumphant grin spreading across his face. The makeshift transmitter they'd set up in the basement of a bombed-out library had done the trick. Chen gave a shaky thumbs up from behind the console, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It worked," Chen panted. "The virus hit their mainframe. They're scrambling up there." Darnell leaned against the wall, keeping his rifle ready. "You really think this'll be enough to turn the tide?" Alex took a breath, staring up at the sky where debris from the collision rained down like meteors. "It's a start. We've rattled them. Now we just have to hit them hard while they're disoriented." He turned to the makeshift map they'd laid out on a cracked table. Red marks indicated known enemy outposts and patrol routes. Their scattered resistance groups were still mostly isolated, but this was their chance to unify and strike. "All right," Alex said, his voice firm. "We move on the communication hubs, take them out, and we isolate the ground forces from their command. If they can't coordinate, they're vulnerable." Chen hesitated. "Sarge, what if they retaliate with full force? We're already spread thin." Alex met his gaze, determination etched in his face. "They struck first. Now it's time they learn what humanity does when backed into a corner. We don't break, we get even." Across the world, similar pockets of resistance were catching wind of the flagship's collision. It was a symbol of hope, a sign that the Drakthar weren't invincible. Leaders rallied their troops, and guerrilla strikes intensified. In Paris, a small band of survivors sabotaged a refueling station, sending alien fuel tanks into a fiery blaze. In Cairo, resistance fighters ambushed an armored patrol, using scavenged explosives to rip through Drakthar armor. The council, safe in their distant stations, began to murmur among themselves. How had the humans managed to cripple the Drakthar flagship? Reports filtered in. Small, sporadic victories. But victories nonetheless. They couldn't ignore it anymore. Humanity wasn't going down as easily as they'd expected. On board the Blood Vengeance, systems flickered as engineers tried to restore order. Krazul stalked through the corridors, fury burning through his veins. Every second they remained vulnerable invited more chaos. As he entered the war room, a tech officer approached cautiously. "Commander, we've intercepted human communications. They're coordinating attacks across multiple locations, targeting our communication hubs." A vicious smile twisted Krazul's mouth. "Foolish apes, let them come. Send our elites to fortify the hubs. We will make them regret their insolence." But the commander's arrogance would cost him dearly. Humanity wasn't playing by the rules anymore. Guerrilla fighters didn't march in straight lines or attack in predictable waves. They came from the shadows, hit hard, and vanished before the Drakthar could regroup. In New Delhi, a squad of resistance fighters hijacked a Drakthar walker, rigging it with explosives and sending it straight into an enemy barracks. In Sydney, snipers picked off patrols from rooftops, while engineers hacked into alien drones to redirect them into each other. Alex received reports of successes from around the globe, his hope growing. He knew it wasn't enough to just hold their ground. They needed to cripple the Drakthar entirely. "Chen," he called, "can you track where their main power relays are? If we can knock out their energy supply, we might just force them to retreat." Chen squinted at the monitors. "Give me a few hours, Sarge. If I can triangulate their power signatures, I might be able to pinpoint the central node." Darnell slapped Alex on the shoulder. "You're thinking of blowing up their power grid? Bold move, man." Alex just grinned, a fierce light in his eyes. If they thought taking Earth would be easy, they're about to get a nasty surprise. He knew the cost would be high, and not everyone would make it out alive. But Earth wasn't about to roll over and die. Humanity had been underestimated one too many times. Now, it was time for payback. Chen worked tirelessly at the console, fingers flying over the keys as he sifted through intercepted signals and scanned energy readings. Alex paced behind him, his mind spinning with 100 thoughts at once. They needed to move fast. The Drakthar would eventually re-establish control, and their chance would be gone. Finally, Chen straightened, wiping the grime from his face with a trembling hand. "Got it, Sarge. The main power relay is in what used to be Colorado Springs. They've set up a massive generator field, drawing power from underground geothermal vents. If we take it out, their ground forces will lose energy shields and weapons systems." Darnell let out a low whistle. "That's a long way from here. How are we supposed to get past their air patrols?" Alex didn't hesitate. "We call in every resistance group between here and Colorado. Create enough chaos to keep the skies distracted while we move in." Darnell gave a wry grin. "A suicide run, then?" "If it means breaking their stranglehold, it's worth it," Alex replied grimly. The plan was simple, but brutal. Strike hard, strike fast, and don't stop moving. Alex sent out encrypted messages to nearby cells, rallying them to hit Drakthar outposts along their route. Distractions and diversions were key. As the team geared up, Chen hesitated, his gaze flicking between the map and the weapons they'd scavenged. "You really think this'll work?" Alex's expression softened for just a moment. "I don't know. But doing nothing isn't an option. We've got to make them bleed." A few hours later, the resistance convoy moved through the war-torn streets. Battered vehicles loaded with improvised weapons and grim-faced fighters. Smoke still choked the air, but morale was high. Word had spread about the flagship collision, and hope was rekindling. The first skirmish happened near St. Louis, where a Drakthar patrol ambushed them from the rooftops. Plasma shots lit up the night, burning through steel and concrete. Alex dove behind a burnt-out truck, barking orders through his radio. "Chen, find me a sniper position. Darnell, lay down suppressing fire." Darnell popped up from cover, unloading bursts from his rifle, while Chen scrambled up the remains of an old fire escape. Within seconds, the crack of his shots echoed, and 2 Drakthar fell from the rooftops, their heavy bodies thudding to the ground. "Clear!" Chen called down. They moved quickly, wasting no time celebrating. The convoy pressed on, weaving through broken highways and collapsed buildings. Resistance groups in Kansas and Nebraska launched hit-and-run attacks on nearby Drakthar camps, drawing attention away from the main team. By the time they hit the outskirts of Colorado Springs, dawn was just breaking, casting long shadows over the alien machinery that dominated the landscape. The geothermal relay stood like a metallic spider, its massive legs sunk deep into the earth, pulsating with an eerie blue glow. Guard patrols swarmed the area, alert and armed to the teeth. Alex scoped out the terrain from a ridge, sweat slicking his brow. That's it. We cut off the power there and we crippled their ground forces worldwide. Chen adjusted his binoculars. We've got about 36 hostiles on the perimeter, plus 2 armored walkers. We need a big enough bang to take the core offline. Darnell checked his gear. We've got the charges, but we'll need to get right up to the base of that thing. No way we're doing it quietly. Alex chewed his lip, formulating a plan. We hit them with a diversion, make them think we're attacking from the north. Once they shift, we slip in from the south and plant the charges. Darnell, you're on demolition. Chen, cover him. I'll coordinate the distraction. Setting up the diversion took every ounce of coordination they had left. Makeshift explosives rigged to abandoned cars and automated gun turrets crafted from scavenged parts gave the illusion of a full-scale assault. When the traps went off, alarms blared throughout the compound. Drakthar soldiers rushed north, converging on the explosions. Alex led Darnell and Chen through a side passage, ducking under pipelines and weaving between stacks of power cells. A lone Drakthar guard rounded a corner, but Chen silenced him with a single shot to the throat before he could raise an alarm. They crept closer, the hum of the power relay vibrating through the ground. Darnell knelt beside the core housing, planting charges with a precision that belied his rough exterior. Just a few more seconds, he muttered. The sound of approaching footsteps made Alex freeze. He motioned for Chen to cover him while he glanced around the corner. A patrol of 6 was moving back, alerted by the quiet. Hold your fire, Alex whispered. Darnell pressed the final charge into place and gave a thumbs up. Done. They ducked into cover just as the patrol rounded the corner, missing them by inches. Once the guards passed, Alex gave the signal to retreat. As they moved back toward the ridge, gunfire erupted to the north. Some of the resistance fighters had pushed closer, drawing the enemy's attention back. When they were at a safe distance, Alex nodded to Darnell. Do it! With a wicked grin, Darnell hit the detonator. The explosion was blinding. Blue energy arced wildly as the geothermal core went critical. The entire relay shuddered, then imploded, sending shockwaves through the ground. The Drakthar defenses flickered and died as power drained from their weapons and shield generators. Across the world, human fighters seized the opportunity. Alien walkers shut down mid-stride, plasma weapons powered off, and communication went dark. Guerrilla forces moved in, overwhelming the suddenly vulnerable invaders. On board the Blood Vengeance. Krazul's face twisted in horror as his tactical display lit up with red alerts. No, it can't be, he whispered. His arrogance had cost him. Humanity had struck back, harder and smarter than he'd ever imagined. Commander Krazul slammed his fist into the console, cracking the reinforced metal. His crimson eyes burned with fury, and his claws scraped harshly against the armrest of his command chair. The bridge was in chaos, reports flooding in from every battalion, all echoing the same devastating message. Power down, shields compromised, weapons offline, ground forces overrun. Varrock, nursing a broken arm from the earlier collision, approached cautiously. Commander, our planetary forces are in disarray. Without power relays, they're losing their primary defenses. Human resistance is overwhelming them. Krazul seized him by the throat, lifting the struggling lieutenant into the air. You incompetent worm! How could a species so primitive dismantle our systems? Varrock choked out a few words. They exploited our reliance on centralized power, guerrilla tactics, decentralized assaults. With a snarl, Krazul hurled him aside, sending him crashing into the bulkhead. The commander glared at the battle reports with pure hatred. How had it come to this? How had these weak, inferior creatures managed to cripple his forces. "We should have wiped them out from orbit," he muttered, fury boiling over. "Enough playing games. Initiate planetary bombardment protocols. Level their cities. No survivors." The bridge crew hesitated. A junior officer glanced up nervously. "Commander, our orbital cannons are still offline. Power conduits are damaged from the collision." Krazul's roar shook the entire bridge. "Then send reinforcements. Mobilize every last troop from the remaining ships. Crush them." But the Drakthar soldiers were in disarray on the ground. Deprived of their superior technology, they were vulnerable. Plasma rifles malfunctioned, armor shields flickered and died, and communication between units was all but severed. Humanity wasn't about to let the opportunity slip by. In Colorado Springs, as the dust settled from the massive explosion, Alex Reyes led his team back toward the convoy. His radio crackled to life, and he heard excited voices from resistance groups worldwide. "They're falling back. Drakthar forces surrendering in the streets. We've taken control of their barracks in Berlin." Alex shared a look with Darnell and Chen. Relief and triumph gleamed in their eyes, but Alex knew it wasn't over yet. The flagship was still intact, and as long as Krazul was alive, Earth remained in danger. He grabbed his radio. "All resistance units, this is Sergeant Reyes. We're making a push for the flagship. We take out their leader, and this invasion ends. Anyone who can move, regroup at the crash site in Chicago. We're taking the fight to them." Chen raised an eyebrow. "You're planning to board that monster?" Alex gave a grim nod. "We don't have a choice. We take out Krazul, or he'll keep sending waves of reinforcements. We can't hold out forever." Word spread like wildfire, and within hours, resistance forces from all over were converging on Chicago, where the blood vengeance remained grounded, struggling to repair itself. Makeshift artillery pounded its hull, keeping its defenses strained, while snipers picked off Drakthar soldiers who ventured too far from the ship. By the time Alex's convoy arrived, hundreds of fighters were already in position. He met with a few of the resistance leaders, grizzled veterans, former soldiers, and ordinary citizens turned warriors. "What's the plan?" asked Marta, a scarred leader from the Detroit cell. Alex mapped out the assault on the back of an old transport truck. "We hit them from 3 sides, force them to concentrate their fire, then our main squad breaches the hangar bay. We fight our way to the bridge and take down Krazul." Darnell cracked his knuckles. "Sounds suicidal. I like it." They moved into position, taking cover behind shattered buildings and piles of rubble. The signal flare shot into the sky, and the assault began. Resistance troops charged forward, pouring gunfire and explosives at the Drakthar troops guarding the entrance. Plasma shots returned fire, but the aliens were clearly struggling without their usual support. Alex led his squad through the chaos, weaving between cover and returning fire when needed. Darnell lobbed grenades into entrenched positions, blowing alien soldiers sky high. Chen picked off sharpshooters from the rear, keeping their path clear. As they neared the hangar, a monstrous Drakthar brute blocked the way, wielding a heavy plasma cannon. The creature roared, leveling its weapon at Alex's team. Before it could fire, a rocket slammed into its chest, detonating with a fiery burst. Marta emerged from a side alley, grinning wickedly. "Figured you could use a hand." Together they stormed the hangar, blasting through the few remaining guards. Inside, the ship's maintenance crew fled in terror as the humans seized control of the loading bay. Alex rallied his squad, pointing toward the central lift. "That elevator leads straight to the command deck," Chen noted, hacking the control panel. "But expect heavy resistance." Darnell snorted. Wouldn't be fun otherwise. They packed into the lift, nerves taut and weapons at the ready. As it ascended, Alex took a deep breath, focusing his mind on the mission. When the doors opened, they were met with a hail of plasma fire. Chen dropped instantly, a blast searing his shoulder. Alex and Darnell dragged him to cover, while Marta and the others returned fire. Across the bridge, Commander Krazoul stood like a vengeful god, glaring down at them from his raised platform. His massive frame cast a shadow over his subordinates, and his voice was pure venom. "You insects dare challenge me on my own ship? I will grind your bones to dust." Alex raised his rifle, eyes locked on his enemy. "You struck first, Krazoul, but humanity doesn't die easy. This is our home. You don't get to take it." The commander leapt down, claws gleaming, and the final battle began. Krazoul landed with a thunderous crash, the deck plates shuddering beneath his immense weight. His eyes blazed with murderous intent as he drew a serrated blade from his hip, a weapon forged from dark alloys and etched with ancient Drakthar runes. Alex barely had time to shove Chen out of the way before Krazoul lunged, slashing the blade in a brutal arc. Sparks flew as the blade sliced through a nearby console, sending shattered metal skittering across the deck. Darnell fired his rifle, the rounds pinging off Krazoul's thick armor. Damn it, he's built like a tank! The commander spun with inhuman speed, backhanding Darnell and sending him sprawling. Marta let loose with her shotgun, aiming for the alien's exposed neck, but Krazoul dodged and swept her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, gasping for air. Alex dropped to one knee, aiming his rifle at the creature's head. "Hey, over here!" Krazoul snarled and charged. Alex squeezed the trigger, sending a burst of bullets into the alien's face, but the rounds barely grazed his armor. The commander swung his blade down, and Alex barely rolled aside, the weapon embedding itself in the metal floor. Chen, despite his injured shoulder, fired a well-placed shot that hit Krazoul in the side of his head, cracking one of his breathing tubes. The commander snarled, grabbing the tube and yanking it free, spitting out thick, dark blood. "You think your pitiful resistance means anything?" Krazoul growled, yanking his blade free. "I have conquered worlds beyond counting. You are nothing but insects beneath my heel." Alex rose to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. "You're just another tyrant who underestimated humanity. We don't go down easy." Before Krazoul could react, Darnell pulled a flashbang from his belt and tossed it at the commander's feet. The explosion of light and sound sent Krazoul staggering, blinded and furious. "Now!" Alex shouted. He and Marta rushed in, firing point-blank into the alien's exposed neck and torso. Krazoul roared, swinging his blade wildly, but his balance was off, and his vision hadn't cleared. Marta aimed for the cracked breathing tube and fired, blowing out the rest of it. Krazoul choked, struggling to breathe, his movements sluggish and desperate. Darnell circled around, pulling a combat knife from his belt. With one smooth motion, he leapt onto Krazoul's back, driving the blade into the seam between the armor plates on his spine. Krazoul howled, thrashing and trying to reach back, but Darnell held on, twisting the knife deeper. Alex saw his chance and sprinted forward, grabbing a fallen alien rifle from the floor. He aimed it at Krazoul's head, finger trembling on the trigger. "This is for everyone you killed, for every city you burned, for Earth." He pulled the trigger, and a bolt of searing energy punched through Krazoul's skull, right between his glowing red eyes. The commander shuddered, his massive frame swaying for a moment before collapsing to the floor with a deafening thud. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the crackle of damaged electronics and the ragged breathing of the resistance fighters. Darnell slid off the alien's back, panting and wiping blood from his hands. Marta looked at the motionless corpse, then at Alex. "Is it over?" Alex nodded slowly, still catching his breath. "Yeah, it's over." Chen leaned against a console, wincing at his injury. "Holy shit, we actually did it." Before they could process the victory, the ship's alarm systems kicked in, and a robotic voice boomed over the speakers. "Warning, Command authority compromised. Automatic distress beacon activated. Galactic Council response imminent. Alex shot a wary look at Chen. What the hell does that mean? Chen hacked into a nearby console, grimacing. The ship sent out a distress signal. The rest of the Drakthar fleet and the Council are gonna know their commander's dead. They might send reinforcements. Darnell scoffed. Let them come. We took down their biggest bully. We can handle whatever's next. But Alex wasn't so sure. We need to seize control of this ship. If we can disable that distress signal, we might have time to regroup before they show up. He glanced down at Krazul's corpse, and then to his team, exhausted but resolute. We've come too far to lose now. Let's secure the bridge and get that signal down. Earth's still ours, and we're not letting anyone take it from us. With a renewed sense of purpose, they moved to the central console and began deciphering the alien systems. As they worked, resistance leaders from the surface reported that the remaining Drakthar soldiers were surrendering or fleeing into the wilderness. Victory chants echoed across the broken cities. Humanity had struck back and claimed their world. But even as they secured the ship, Alex knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The galaxy now knew what humanity was capable of, and they wouldn't sit idly by. Earth would have to be ready for whatever came next. As Alex stared out at the horizon from the bridge window, he couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction. The Drakthar had struck first, but humanity's revenge had been inevitable, and they weren't done fighting yet. In the weeks that followed the death of Commander Krazul, Earth slowly emerged from the shadow of invasion. Cities lay in ruins, countless lives had been lost, and the scars of war marked every corner of the globe. Yet amidst the devastation, a fierce and unbreakable spirit rose, one that refused to bow to alien tyranny. The remaining Drakthar forces, leaderless and scattered, either surrendered or fled into the wilderness. Some tried to regroup, but without their power relays and centralized command, they were easy targets for the organized resistance. Humanity reclaimed their cities piece by piece, dragging the invaders out of hiding and ensuring they wouldn't pose a threat ever again. The blood vengeance became a symbol of victory and defiance. Engineers and scientists from around the world flocked to the massive warship, studying its technology and unlocking secrets that could change the future of human civilization. Reverse engineering the ship's systems proved challenging, but humanity was stubborn, driven by both vengeance and survival. Alex Reyes stood on the bridge, overlooking the cityscape of Chicago through the flagship's massive viewport. The cleanup efforts were already underway. Smoke still rose from distant fires, but people were returning, rebuilding, and reclaiming their lives. He glanced at the alien consoles that Chen and a few tech specialists were working on, still trying to decipher the distress signal protocols. Darnell entered the bridge, wiping sweat from his face. South perimeter's clear. We rounded up a few stragglers hiding in the sewers. No major threats left. Alex nodded, relieved. Good. Keep patrols active just in case. I don't want any surprises. Chen approached, looking both triumphant and exhausted. We did it, Sarge. We managed to disable the distress beacon. No more signals going out. Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Nice work, Chen. That'll buy us some time. Marta leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. Think the council's gonna come knocking? Alex looked out at the horizon, the sun just beginning to set. They will. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but they'll come. We just killed one of their most feared commanders and took his ship. They can't ignore that. Darnell smirked. Let them come. We know how to fight now. We know how to hit back. Chen hesitated, his gaze serious. Yeah, but we can't just stay on the defensive forever. If the Council sends an entire fleet, we're screwed. We barely survived one flagship. Alex nodded. That's why we're not just defending. We're preparing. We've got the ship, we've got their tech, and we've got our will to survive. If they want to bring the fight to us, we'll be ready. He looked at the remnants of Krazul's command armor, now stripped of its power and draped over a broken console, a symbol of the fallen tyrant and a reminder of humanity's victory. Over the following months, Earth transformed. Factories converted to build hybrid human-alien weapons, old alliances reforged, and nations that had once been rivals stood together, united by a common enemy. Skilled pilots and soldiers trained relentlessly, preparing to defend their world from whatever threat came next. The Council, shaken by the loss of Krazul and the unexpected resistance from humanity, deliberated cautiously. Some advocated for an all-out assault to crush Earth before it grew stronger. Others warned that such an action might spark a rebellion among other subjugated species, who would see humanity as a symbol of hope. For the first time in centuries, the mighty council was divided and uncertain. One day, as Alex surveyed the rebuilding efforts from the ship's bridge, a message crackled through the comm system. Chen adjusted the signal and widened his eyes. "It's a transmission from space," he said, barely able to contain his shock. "It's not Drakthar. It's from the Council itself." Alex moved closer, his jaw set. "Put it through." The voice that filled the room was cold and measured, each word precise and weighted. "To the leaders of Earth, your defiance has been noted. Your resistance, though unexpected, will not go unanswered. Prepare yourselves. The Council does not forget, nor do we forgive rebellion. Surrender your world and submit to our authority, or face total annihilation." The transmission ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Darnell snorted, rolling his eyes. Typical alien bullshit. They still think we're scared of them. Alex smiled grimly. "They're coming. They're bringing their whole force. But we've got something they didn't expect. A reason to fight. We've bled for this world, and we're not about to let anyone take it from us." Marta glanced at the battle-scarred city below. "If they want a war, they're going to find out just how mean we can get." Chen smirked. "Humanity's revenge was inevitable, and they haven't seen anything yet." As the crew of the Blood Vengeance prepared for the battles yet to come, Alex couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. The universe had thought Earth was weak, fragile, and primitive. But they had learned the hard way that humans didn't just survive. They fought back. And now, with fire in their hearts and vengeance on their minds, they would take the fight to the stars if that's what it took. Earth was ready. Let the galaxy come. Let the galaxy. The galaxy was never meant to be peaceful. It was a cold, unforgiving place where only the strongest survived. The Zorath Dominion knew this better than anyone. For centuries they expanded ruthlessly, crushing weaker species under their iron grip. Planets fell one after another, entire civilizations wiped from existence. Their reign was absolute until they reached Earth. Humanity wasn't ready when the Zorath first struck. The initial assault devastated half of Earth's military forces. Cities burned, skies filled with ash, and the oceans boiled under relentless bombardment. Yet humans didn't break. They fought back with whatever they had: guerrilla tactics, improvised weapons, and sheer stubbornness. The Zorath didn't expect resistance, let alone one so fierce. The battle for Earth stretched into years. Then the unimaginable happened. Humanity won. Through innovation, sacrifice, and unity, they pushed the Zorath back, reclaimed their world, and became legends among the stars. The galaxy watched in shock as Earth rose from ashes to forge an armada. No longer prey, humanity sought out those who had been brutalized by the Zorath and offered an alliance. For the first time, the oppressed saw hope, a fighting chance against tyranny. Years passed, and the newly formed United Human Confederation amassed strength. They built massive warships and trained warriors with unyielding resolve. Humanity's armada became a beacon in the dark, patrolling trade routes, safeguarding planets, and dismantling Zorath outposts wherever they could. The message was clear: no more fear, no more submission. As word spread, the enslaved races rallied to humanity's side. Fragile alliances between once feuding species now solidified under Earth's banner. The Zorath could no longer divide and conquer. Their enemies stood united. Infuriated, the Dominion declared total war. One night, as the human flagship Valiant orbited the peaceful planet Nera, a distress signal cut through the void. Nera, a world barely capable of defending itself, was under attack. Hundreds of Zorath warships had appeared out of nowhere, ready to burn the planet to cinders. Captain Adrian Cole stood on the bridge of the Valiant, her steel-gray eyes scanning the tactical display. Red blips covered the screen, an overwhelming force. Beside her, Lieutenant Marlowe cursed under his breath. "Ma'am, they're sending a transmission," Marlowe said, adjusting his headset. "Put it through," Adrian ordered. The screen flickered, revealing the Zorath Supreme Commander. His scaled, imposing form filled the display, his slitted eyes narrowed with contempt. "Human," he sneered, "this world will burn, and your defiance will be buried with it. Stand down and let us take what is ours." Adrian remained calm. "This planet isn't yours. You have no right to it, and we won't let you slaughter innocents." The commander bared his fangs. "You overestimate your importance, Ape. Your little coalition crumbles today. Stand aside, or be destroyed." Adrian glanced around at her crew. Faces hardened with determination. There was no fear in their eyes, only resolve. She turned back to the screen. "Then come and try," she said. "You'll find humanity far less breakable than you remember." The transmission cut off, and the Zorath fleet advanced. Adrian knew what had to be done. She activated the fleet-wide comms. "To all ships, form a defensive perimeter around Nera. No one breaks through. Prepare fighters and charge all weapons. Today we stand as the final shield between this world and annihilation. Humanity does not retreat. We do not surrender. We hold the line." The crew erupted into motion, battle stations buzzing with activity. Adrian took a deep breath, calming her racing heart. She knew the odds. They were hopelessly outnumbered. But retreat wasn't an option, not when lives hung in the balance. As the first wave of Zorath fighters launched, the Valiant roared to life, unleashing a torrent of plasma fire. Human warships moved in tight formation, flanking the heavier cruisers and drawing enemy fire away from the surface. Explosions rocked the void, and the sky burned with streaks of blue and red. Adrian watched as one of their frigates, the Resolute, took a direct hit, its hull splitting apart in a fiery blaze. Her fists clenched, but there was no time to mourn. They had to push forward, no matter the cost. The Zorath were relentless, pressing their advantage, but humanity fought back with ruthless efficiency. For every ship lost, 2 more filled the gap. Adrian coordinated maneuvers, giving orders with unwavering conviction. As the battle raged on, a second wave of Zorath reinforcements dropped out of hyperspace, more ships than they could count. Marlowe glanced at her, worry etched on his face. "Captain, there's too many of them." Adrian gritted her teeth. "We hold, no matter what. We promised to protect this world, and that's what we'll do. Tell the Nera defense to prepare ground forces in case we're breached." With another deep breath, she watched the screen, knowing that humanity's legacy would either be forged here or be forgotten forever. The battle was chaos. Space itself seemed to be on fire, as ships from both sides were engulfed in flames and debris. The Zorath pressed their attack with ruthless precision, but the human fleet held the line, refusing to back down. Adrienne barked orders, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Redirect power to forward shields. All gunnery crews focus fire on their lead destroyers." Lieutenant Marlowe coordinated the responses, his fingers dancing over the console as he relayed Adrienne's commands to the rest of the fleet. The Valiant surged forward, its cannons blazing as it carved through the enemy lines. But for every Zorath ship they destroyed, it seemed 3 more took its place. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," Marlowe said, his voice tense. "Put it through," Adrienne replied, never taking her eyes off the tactical display. A hologram flickered to life, a Niran official, her pale green skin and wide eyes filled with terror. "Captain Cole, we're seeing enemy dropships entering the atmosphere. Our defense grid is compromised. Please, we can't—" The transmission cut off abruptly as a massive shockwave shook the Valiant. Adrienne swore under her breath and turned to Marlowe. "They're going for planetary invasion," she said, her mind racing. "They want to slaughter the population regardless of space superiority. Cowards!" "What's the plan, Captain?" Marlowe asked. Adrienne hesitated for just a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. If they continued to hold the line, they might stop the fleet, but the ground invasion would still proceed. If they pulled back to protect the surface, the blockade would fall, and the Zorath would overwhelm them. "Split the fleet," she ordered. "Frigates and light cruisers, break formation and descend to assist planetary defense. All heavy ships and carriers maintain position and continue to engage the main fleet. We're not letting them through." "Acknowledged," Marlowe replied, sending the new orders. The formation shifted as the lighter ships peeled off and made their way toward the planet's surface. The Zorath took advantage of the gap, pressing forward with their larger vessels. Adrienne grit her teeth and activated the ship-wide intercom. "This is Captain Cole. We're about to be hit hard. I won't lie to you, the odds aren't good. But humanity didn't survive Earth's burning skies just to falter here. We're the last shield standing between Nera and genocide. We fight because they can't. We hold because no one else will. Give them hell." A fierce cheer erupted through the comms, bolstering morale as the crew steeled themselves for the next assault. The Valiant pushed ahead, leading the charge as plasma blasts lit up the void. One of the Zorath battleships broke formation and rammed straight into a human destroyer. The collision was catastrophic, both vessels erupting in a blinding explosion. Adrienne's heart twisted as familiar names on the tactical display blinked out one by one. "Captain, they're flanking us on the starboard side," Marlowe shouted. "Redirect the Ironclad and Sovereign to cover our right. Fire torpedo salvo at grid 3-5C and force them into crossfire." As the ships adjusted, Adrienne's mind raced, calculating every maneuver, every potential loss. The numbers didn't add up. They were running out of ships, running out of time. Desperation gnawed at her resolve, but she forced it down. The crew needed her strong, even if she felt the creeping edge of hopelessness. Suddenly, the sensors picked up a massive energy surge, something barreling toward them from hyperspace. Marlowe glanced at her, his face pale. "Reinforcements?" he asked hopefully. Adrienne shook her head. "No. Zorath doesn't use energy signatures like that." The viewscreen lit up as a new fleet dropped out of hyperspace, sleek, dark-hulled ships gliding into formation behind the human armada. Adrienne recognized the markings instantly. The Vendaran coalition. Allies. They'd come. The Vendaran flagship hailed them, and Adrienne accepted the transmission. A tall, imposing alien figure appeared, his crystalline features shimmering with determination. "Captain Cole," He greeted with a firm nod. "We received your distress signal and brought every warship available. Nira will not fall." A wave of relief washed over Adrian, but she kept her composure. "Glad to see you, Admiral Reth. We're getting hammered out here." "Your ships have held beyond expectation," Reth replied. "Let us take the forward assault. You've bought us the time to strike decisively." With that, the Venderan ships surged ahead, their advanced particle cannons tearing through the Zorath lines. The sudden shift in power rattled the Dominion fleet, and their formation crumbled under the combined might of humanity and its allies. Adrian allowed herself a breath, just one, as the tide of battle shifted. The Zorath began to retreat, their battered ships fleeing into hyperspace. Cheers erupted across the Valiant, but Adrian knew it wasn't over yet. "Marlowe, status on the planet?" "Ground forces are still engaged, but our frigates are providing support. Niran militias are holding key points. It's brutal, but they're managing." Adrian nodded. "Coordinate with Reth to send reinforcements to the surface. We can't let the ground war drag on. Patch me through to planetary command." As the connection established, she took another steadying breath. Nira wasn't safe yet, but they'd bought precious time. The Zorath's iron fist had been shattered here, at least for now. But Adrian couldn't forget the cost. The ships and crews lost, the civilians still under siege below. Victory wasn't enough. They needed to ensure the Zorath would never dare to threaten another world again. The battle was just the beginning, and Adrian knew she wouldn't rest until the Zorath Dominion was nothing but a bitter memory. The aftermath of the space battle left the void littered with the twisted remains of Zorath warships, drifting like silent ghosts in the darkness. The Venderan fleet maintained position around Nira, scanning for any signs of returning enemies. Adrian sat at her command console, exhaustion gnawing at her bones, but her mind remained sharp. There was still work to be done. "Damage report," she ordered, leaning back and wiping sweat from her brow. Marlowe pulled up the data, his voice grim. "We've lost 6 ships, including the Resolute and Ironclad. Casualty estimates are in the hundreds. Structural damage to the Valiant's starboard thrusters and primary reactor housing. Repairs are underway." Adrian nodded, the weight of those losses settling on her shoulders. She couldn't afford to grieve. Not yet. Not while people were still fighting for their lives on the surface. A message chimed on her console. A transmission from Admiral Reth. Adrian accepted it, and his crystalline visage appeared on the display. "Captain Cole, our scouts report that the Zorath ground forces are concentrated near Nira's capital city," Reth said. "They're fortifying positions and using civilians as human shields." Adrian clenched her fists. "Cowardly bastards. Do you have forces ready to support the counterattack?" Reth nodded. "My ground units are mobilizing. Your frigates are already making precision strikes on enemy positions, but the risk to civilians is high. We must coordinate carefully." Adrian frowned, weighing the options. "We can't risk orbital bombardment, not with hostages involved. We'll need to insert tactical squads to break the defensive lines from within." A tactical alert sounded, and Marlowe glanced at his screen, eyes widening. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from the surface. It's Commander Ellison of the Resolute survivors. Patching it through." The screen shifted to reveal a battered, blood-stained man leaning against a ruined wall, his armor scorched and cracked. His breathing was ragged, but his eyes were fierce. "Captain." "Cole," he gasped. "We made it to the capital outskirts. Zorath are holed up in the old government complex. They've rigged explosives, planning to level the entire district if we get too close." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Ellison, are you and your men combat ready?" He gave a weak grin. "We're still breathing, ma'am. That's enough. But we're pinned down, and they've got heavy artillery on the rooftops. If we don't take those out, any approach is a death sentence. Adrian turned to Marlowe. Get me tactical teams and a dropship. We're going down there to finish this. Captain? Marlowe looked stunned. You're personally leading the assault? Adrian gave him a hard look. I'm not sending anyone into that meat grinder without being there myself. Get it done. Marlowe hesitated, but nodded, relaying the orders. Adrian moved to the armory, donning her combat gear with practiced efficiency. As she secured her rifle, Marlowe approached. His expression conflicted. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. I've never been more sure, she replied. This isn't just about Nira. It's about making sure the Zorath know that humanity doesn't just fight from orbit. We fight on the ground, face to face, and we don't back down. He gave a small nod, then saluted. Good luck, Captain. Minutes later, Adrian boarded the dropship alongside an elite squad of Marines. As the vessel launched, she looked at the determined faces around her. Each one knew the risks, and each one was prepared to die if it meant saving the civilians below. The descent was turbulent, plasma fire streaking past as the dropship weaved through the chaos. Explosions rumbled from the cityscape, and smoke plumed into the sky. Adrian steadied herself, gripping the overhead railing. Lieutenant Briggs, the squad leader, gave her a nod. We hit hard, we hit fast. Priority is neutralizing those rooftop cannons so our forces can push in. Adrian agreed. Once the artillery's down, we secure the hostages and disable the explosives. No mistakes, no casualties. The dropship touched down amid rubble and scorched earth. The Marines poured out, forming a defensive perimeter as Adrian scanned the area. Zorath soldiers immediately opened fire from the surrounding buildings, and the humans retaliated with ruthless precision. Adrian ducked behind a fallen column, barking orders. Briggs, take your team and hit the right flank. I'll move with Beta Squad to the left and sweep through the alleys. We'll meet at the central tower. Aye, Captain, Briggs replied, motioning his squad forward. As Adrian led her team through the shattered streets, the Zorath resistance intensified. They fought like cornered animals, desperate and brutal. Adrian took down a sniper perched on a broken archway, her rifle precise and unyielding. The Marines moved in tandem, covering each other as they pushed forward. Suddenly, a scream echoed from a nearby building. Adrian motioned for silence, then crept toward the sound. Peering through a cracked window, she saw civilians, men, women, and children huddled in fear as a Zorath officer barked orders, wiring charges to the foundation pillars. She signaled her team and whispered, "On my mark, breach and clear. No collateral damage." With a sharp nod, the Marines moved into position. Adrian counted down with her fingers. 3, 2, 1, then kicked in the door. Gunfire erupted, and the Zorath barely had time to react before being cut down. One officer tried to detonate his charges, but Adrian's shot pierced his skull before his claw hit the trigger. Once the room was secured, Adrian moved to the terrified civilians, her voice calm and steady. You're safe now. Stay low and move toward the extraction point with Beta Squad. We'll handle the rest. A woman clutched her child, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you so much. Adrian gave a firm nod and moved out, signaling Briggs to report in. The rooftop artillery was down, and with the explosives neutralized, the push into the central complex could begin. With determination burning in her veins, Adrian prepared for the final assault. The Zorath had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated humanity's will to fight, even on alien soil. And Adrian would make sure they paid for it. Adrian pushed forward with her team, navigating the crumbling alleys and shattered streets of Nira's capital. Smoke hung thick in the air, and the distant rumble of explosions painted the sky in eerie shades of orange and red. Her comm crackled to life as Briggs reported in. Captain, We've taken the right flank. Artillery emplacements are secured and disabled. Zorath resistance is scattered, but they're regrouping near the central tower," Briggs said, his voice firm but cautious. Adrian nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. "Copy that. We're approaching from the left. Hold your position and wait for the signal." She turned to her squad, their faces streaked with dirt and determination. "This is it. The central tower is their last holdout. They'll fight like hell to keep it. We hit hard and fast. No time for hesitation." A chorus of affirmatives echoed back. Adrian signaled them to move, weaving through rubble-strewn paths as they made their way toward the imposing structure ahead. The tower loomed like a monolith, its spire piercing the smoke-filled sky. Zorath soldiers guarded the entrance, weapons drawn, eyes sharp. Adrian gestured for the squad to take cover behind a collapsed archway, formulating a quick plan. She eyed the narrow path leading to the tower, a choke point, no doubt rigged with traps. "Davies, Martinez, flank around the north side and draw their attention. Weaver, with me, we'll breach from the south entrance while they're distracted," Adrian whispered. They moved like shadows, silent and efficient. As Davies opened fire from the north, the guards snapped to attention, returning fire and abandoning their post. Adrian took the opportunity, slipping around to the southern entry, where Weaver set a charge on the reinforced door. "Ready?" Weaver whispered, his hands steady despite the tension. Adrian gave a curt nod. "Do it!" The door blasted inward, and Adrian surged forward, weapon raised. Inside, chaos erupted as the Zorath scrambled to react. She picked her targets with brutal precision, one to the left, one by the staircase, a third behind the sandbag barrier. Weaver moved beside her, covering her flank as they cleared the room. More troops poured in from the adjacent corridors, and Adrian dropped to one knee, her rifle barking relentlessly. Weaver cursed as a plasma bolt grazed his shoulder, but he pushed through the pain, taking down 2 charging Zorath with his sidearm. As the last enemy fell, Adrian hurried over, inspecting Weaver's wound. "You good to keep going?" He grimaced but nodded. "Just a scratch, ma'am. Nothing to worry about." She gave him a quick pat on the shoulder and moved deeper into the complex. Briggs's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, we've breached the north side. They're falling back toward the central chamber. Be advised. Our scouts detected high-energy signatures. They're powering up something big." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Acknowledged. Move in and converge on the main hall. We'll cut them off." She picked up the pace, her boots pounding against the cracked tiles as they advanced. The walls were scorched and pocked with bullet holes, a grim reminder of the desperation seeping through the Zorath ranks. They knew they were losing. Adrian felt a bitter satisfaction in that. As they reached the central chamber doors, a heavy, reinforced barrier blocked their way. Weaver examined the control panel, shaking his head. "Looks like they've locked it down tight. I can hack it, but it'll take a few minutes." Adrian cursed under her breath. "Do it. Briggs, we're at the central chamber, but it's locked down. How's your team?" "We're right outside the opposite entrance," Briggs replied. "Got charges set, ready to blow on your mark." "Hold off for now. Let's see if we can bypass this without blowing the structure apart," Adrian replied. Weaver worked his magic, fingers flying over the cracked screen, bypassing security protocols one after another. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he concentrated. Adrian kept her rifle trained on the corridor, listening intently for movement. A sudden thud reverberated through the floor, and a low hum filled the air. Adrian's stomach twisted with dread. "Weaver, faster! They're powering up whatever weapon they have in there." "I'm on it, Captain. Almost there," he muttered, sparks flying from the panel. Suddenly, the door hissed and slid open, revealing the grand chamber beyond. At the far end stood a massive Zorath war machine, an artillery cannon mounted on a mobile platform, thrumming with energy. Dozens of Zorath soldiers manned control stations, while their commander barked orders from a raised platform. Adrian's eyes widened. They're targeting the planetary core. If that thing fires, Nira's gone. No time to think. She raised her rifle and fired at the control panel on the cannon, sparks and smoke erupting from it. The Zorath commander snarled, pointing at her, and his soldiers opened fire. "Go loud!" Adrian shouted, charging into the room with her squad. Briggs's team breached the opposite entrance simultaneously, catching the Zorath in a deadly crossfire. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds filled the air, the sound deafening and chaotic. Adrian pushed forward, taking cover behind a massive support beam. Weaver lobbed a flash grenade, blinding the nearest group of soldiers, and they cut them down without mercy. Adrian's eyes locked onto the commander, who barked frantic orders as the cannon continued to power up. "Weaver, find a way to shut that thing down," Adrian ordered. "I'm on it," he replied, dashing for the nearest console. The commander spotted him and drew a blade, leaping from the platform with a predatory grace. Adrian intercepted him, catching his downward strike with her rifle, then driving her knee into his gut. The Zorath roared and swung wildly, but Adrian ducked under his blade, sweeping his legs out from under him. Before he could recover, she slammed the butt of her rifle into his skull, cracking his carapace. He lashed out with his claws, slicing across her forearm, but she didn't relent. Grabbing his arm, she twisted it until she heard the bone snap, then fired point-blank into his chest. The commander collapsed, gurgling his last breath. Adrian wiped the blood from her face, turning to see Weaver desperately working on the console. "Hurry!" she barked. Weaver grimaced. "It's too late. The charge is building exponentially. We can't stop it from here." Adrian's heart pounded. There was no time to evacuate the city. She grabbed her comm. "All units, brace for impact. This is it." And then, the cannon fired. The cannon's beam tore through the air with a deafening roar, a searing pillar of energy lancing toward the sky. Adrian braced herself, heart hammering, knowing that the blast would hit the planetary core and tear Nira apart. But just as the beam reached its apex, something unimaginable happened. A second beam, brilliant and shimmering with a bluish hue, intercepted it mid-air. The collision sent shockwaves rippling across the sky, and the Zorath energy blast dissipated, scattering like fractured glass. Adrian stared, breathless and confused. "What the hell just happened?" she whispered. Weaver checked his handheld scanner, eyes wide. "That wasn't us." "Ma'am, it's coming from orbit." Adrian switched her comm to the fleet channel. "Valiant, report. What's going on up there?" Marlowe's voice came through, shaky but triumphant. "Captain, you won't believe this. Admiral Reth coordinated with our tech crews to reconfigure the Vendaran flagship's primary cannon. They used it to counter the energy surge from the surface." Adrian's breath came out in a shuddering gasp of relief. "Damn. That was too close. Good work, Marlowe. Keep monitoring for any more surges." "Yes, ma'am," he replied. Adrian looked around the chamber. The surviving Zorath soldiers had either fled or lay dead on the floor. The war machine stood motionless, its power core dimmed and inert. The Marines were catching their breath, some slumping to the ground in exhaustion. She wiped her face with a torn sleeve and turned to Weaver. "Can you disable the rest of the power systems? Make sure nothing like that happens again." He nodded. "Give me a minute, Captain. I'll make sure this thing never fires again." Adrian activated her comm, switching to the local command channel. "Briggs, report." His voice came back, steady but weary. "Area secure, Captain. We're sweeping the lower levels, but it looks like the rest of the Zorath forces have either surrendered or scattered. City defenses are regaining control." Adrian exhaled slowly. Understood. Regroup at the primary junction and secure the remaining hostages. We'll mop up any stragglers. Good work out there, Briggs. Thank you, ma'am. Wouldn't have made it without your lead, he replied. Adrian gave a tired smile, but it quickly faded as she caught sight of the civilians who had been huddled in fear just moments ago. A young Niran boy peeked out from behind a pillar, his wide, luminescent eyes filled with awe and caution. Adrian knelt down, lowering her weapon to appear less intimidating. It's over, she said gently. You're safe now. The boy hesitated before stepping closer, and a woman, his mother by the look of her, rushed forward and pulled him into a tight embrace. The other civilians slowly emerged from hiding, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. One of the elders approached Adrian, bowing his head. We thought it was the end, he said, voice trembling. We've never seen anyone fight back like that. You saved us. Saved all of Nira. Adrian gave a somber nod. We did what we had to. No one deserves to live in fear of monsters like the Zorath. Humanity made a promise to protect those who can't protect themselves. Tears glistened in the elder's eyes as he clasped her hand with both of his. You are welcome on Nira as heroes. Always. Adrian gave a faint, tired smile, but before she could respond, her calm crackled again. Marlowe's voice was filled with urgency. Captain, you need to see this. I'm patching a live feed through to your visor. A holographic display appeared before her eyes, showing a massive concentration of Zorath warships at the edge of the system, an armada even larger than before. Adrian's heart sank. They're regrouping, she muttered. Marlowe hesitated. Not just regrouping. They're bringing in everything they've got. Long-range scans show at least 4 dreadnoughts and dozens of heavy cruisers. It's a final push, Captain. Adrian felt a cold chill run down her spine. The Zorath weren't just trying to reclaim Nira. They intended to annihilate it entirely. A desperate last stand. She took a deep breath, forcing her fear down. Marlowe, alert Admiral Reth. Prepare all ships for immediate engagement. Activate planetary shields and focus on evacuating the wounded. We're not giving up this ground. Yes, ma'am, Marlowe replied, though his voice betrayed a hint of doubt. Adrian switched channels to address the entire fleet. This is Captain Cole to all units. The Zorath are preparing one final assault. They know they're losing, and they're throwing everything they've got at us. I know you're tired. I know we've lost good people today, but we can't falter. Not now. Nira stands because of your courage. Let's make sure it stays that way. The comms erupted in affirmations and battle cries, soldiers rallying to her words. Adrian clenched her fists, determination surging through her veins. Weaver, get this place secured and set up a remote detonation on that cannon. If they try to reactivate it, I want it vaporized, she ordered. He gave her a firm nod. Understood, Captain. It'll be ready in 5. Adrian stood up, her gaze shifting to the sky, where the looming threat approached. The people of Nira looked to her with a mixture of hope and fear. She couldn't let them see her doubt. Walking over to the boy and his mother, she knelt down and managed a reassuring smile. We're going to protect you. I promise. The boy looked at her with a fierce determination that almost made her heart ache. You're not afraid, are you? He asked. She hesitated just a moment, then shook her head. Not while you're counting on me. We've come too far to lose now. Standing tall, Adrian activated her comm one last time. All ground forces, fall back to secure positions and prepare for bombardment. If this is where we make our stand, then we'll make damn sure the Zorath remember why humanity is never underestimated. As the dark silhouettes of the incoming fleet grew on the horizon, Adrian knew they were on the edge of either victory or annihilation, One last battle. One final shield between innocence and extinction. And she wasn't about to let that shield break. Adrienne barely had a moment to catch her breath before the comms lit up again with Marlowe's urgent voice. "Captain, the Zorath Armada has entered the inner system. They're ignoring our outer defense perimeter and heading straight for Nira. Admiral Reth is mobilizing the Coalition fleet to intercept." Adrienne nodded grimly. "Understood. Tell Reth we'll hold the ground no matter what. Send every combat-ready ship to intercept their approach. We can't let them make landfall." She switched to the local ground channel. "All units, this is Captain Cole. Prepare for aerial bombardment and possible ground assault. Fortify positions and make every shot count. This is it. The final stand." The troops acknowledged her command, and Adrienne turned her gaze skyward, where the first glimmers of the enemy fleet were visible even through the smoke and haze. The tension was suffocating, but she kept her shoulders straight, refusing to let fear seep through her calm facade. Weaver approached, wiping soot from his face. "Charges are set on the cannon, Captain. One trigger, and it'll be scrap metal." "Good," Adrienne replied. "Have the engineers rig the perimeter with everything they've got. If the Zorath hit the ground, I want them walking into a minefield." Weaver saluted and moved out, rallying the tech teams. Adrienne checked her weapon, tightening the straps of her armor. A few surviving civilians had gathered nearby, their eyes reflecting both gratitude and apprehension. She offered them a reassuring nod. "You've done more than anyone could ask," said the elder from earlier, his hands trembling as he spoke. "No matter what happens, we'll never forget how humanity stood for us." Adrienne forced a smile. "We're not done yet. Stay inside and keep low. If we fall back, follow the evacuation route to the lower tunnels." The elder gave a solemn nod before leading his people to safer ground. Adrienne took a steadying breath, her mind racing with battle plans. She had faced death before, but never like this, not with so many lives hanging in the balance. The sky rumbled with the sound of energy discharges as the first wave of Zorath fighters broke through the atmosphere. Coalition gunships soared up to meet them, and the air erupted with tracer fire and plasma bursts. One fighter spiraled out of control, crashing into a crumbling building just 2 blocks away. Adrienne activated her comm. "Briggs, what's the situation at the East Gate?" "Getting hammered, Captain," Briggs shouted over the sound of gunfire. "Zorath drop pods are hitting our lines. We're holding, but just barely." Adrienne cursed under her breath. "Reinforcements are on the way. Hold your ground." A massive explosion rocked the western sector, and Marlowe's voice came through the comms. "Captain, one of the dreadnoughts just launched a kinetic bombardment. The western trench is gone." Adrienne's heart twisted painfully. "Casualties?" "Unknown. But it doesn't look good," Marlowe replied, his voice tight. The battle overhead intensified as Admiral Reth's ships closed with the Zorath fleet, exchanging devastating broadsides. The sky was a kaleidoscope of burning wreckage and bright energy pulses. Despite the Coalition's resistance, the enemy armada pressed forward relentlessly, driven by sheer desperation and fury. A loud boom snapped Adrienne's attention back to the ground fight. A Zorath assault mech crashed through a barricade, plasma cannons blazing. Adrienne fired a burst, but the rounds pinged harmlessly off its armor. "Take that thing down!" she shouted, signaling her squad to concentrate fire. Rocket launchers fired from rooftops, striking the mech's legs and sending. Adrienne charged forward, closing the distance before the pilot could react. She vaulted onto its chassis and ripped open the access panel, jamming a grenade inside. Leaping clear, she barely hit the ground before the explosion tore the mech apart. She didn't have time to catch her breath before a swarm of Zorath infantry surged forward, driven by frenzy and desperation. The Marines met them with disciplined volleys, but the sheer numbers threatened to overwhelm. Briggs's voice came through again, strained and ragged. "Captain, they're breaking through on the east side. We need support." Adrian gritted her teeth. "I'm on my way. Weaver, secure the central tower and make sure nothing gets through. If it looks like we're losing ground, blow the cannon." Weaver hesitated. "But Captain..." "That's an order," Adrian snapped, more harshly than intended. Weaver gave a sharp nod and moved to follow through. Running through the debris-filled streets, Adrian made her way to the eastern perimeter. The sight was grim. Corpses littered the ground, and the survivors were desperately fighting to hold back the tide of Zorath infantry. She spotted Briggs, blood streaking his face as he fired from behind a makeshift barricade. Adrian slid into cover beside him. "Status?" she barked. He shook his head, teeth gritted. "They just keep coming, Captain. I don't know how much longer we can hold." Adrian forced herself to think, her mind racing. They couldn't hold out against such overwhelming numbers. There was only one option left. "Marlowe," she called over the comm, "prepare an orbital strike on the eastern gate." Silence followed for a heartbeat. "Captain, our own troops are down there." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I know, but if the Zorath break through, Nira falls. Set the coordinates. Give me 60 seconds to get our people clear." "Understood," Marlowe replied, voice thick with reluctance. Adrian grabbed Briggs by the shoulder. "Pull back. Now we're calling down an orbital strike." His eyes widened with shock, but he didn't argue. "You heard the captain. Fall back. Move." As the troops retreated, Adrian covered their exit, laying down suppressive fire as the Zorath charged. One managed to get close, its blade swinging for her throat, but Briggs shot it down just in time. They made it to a safe distance, and Adrian gave the final order. "Valiant, fire at will." High above, the Valiant's main cannon discharged, a blinding beam lancing through the atmosphere and slamming into the ground. The shockwave sent dust and ash billowing in every direction, and the Zorath vanguard was obliterated in a single fiery instant. The survivors of Adrian's squad looked on in stunned silence as the smoke cleared, revealing nothing but scorched earth where the enemy had once been. Adrian lowered her rifle, shoulders sagging with exhaustion and guilt. The battle wasn't over. The sky still burned with the remnants of the Zorath fleet. But the line had held. Barely. Adrian knew this was just one victory in a long, brutal war. The Zorath would keep coming, desperate to reclaim their dominance. But as long as humanity had warriors like those who fought today, determined, fearless, and unyielding, the galaxy would know one undeniable truth. Humanity didn't break. They fought, they bled, and they stood as the final shield when no one else could. Adrian took a shaky breath, pushing down her grief. There would be time to mourn later. For now, survival was enough. The battle's aftermath left Nira scarred but standing. Smoke hung over the ruined cityscape, and the air was thick with the acrid scent of plasma burns and scorched metal. Adrian surveyed the devastation from the central tower, her heart heavy with the cost of victory. The Zorath armada had been shattered, and what remained of their forces had fled into the void. Admiral Reth's voice came through her comm, steady but solemn. "Captain Cole, we've confirmed it. Zorath forces are in full retreat. We're monitoring their exit trajectory, but it looks like they've given up on Nira. You did it." Adrian didn't smile. "We did it. Your reinforcements saved our asses out there. How's the fleet?" "Battered but functional," Reth replied. "We've lost several ships, but the core of our forces remains intact. Repairs are already underway. The people of Nira owe you their lives." Adrian nodded, trying to let the relief sink in. but it felt hollow with the weight of so many lost lives pressing down on her. She turned to see Briggs approaching, his arm bandaged and his face smeared with soot. "They're starting to dig through the rubble," he said. "Survivors are coming out, and we're setting up medical tents in the safe zones. Marlowe's coordinating aid drops." "Good," Adrienne replied, her voice subdued. "Make sure they get priority. We'll handle the cleanup after everyone's safe." Briggs hesitated, studying her weary expression. "Captain, we did it. We held the line." Adrienne gave a faint nod. "Yeah, but at what cost?" He didn't answer, knowing she wasn't looking for reassurance. He just gave her a nod of respect and headed back to help with the recovery efforts. Adrienne lingered at the tower, letting the grim reality settle around her. Victory had always been uncertain, and now that it was achieved, it felt almost surreal. Weaver approached, his face showing the same exhaustion that everyone shared. "The cannon's been disarmed and dismantled. I made sure nothing is left that could be used against us." "Good work," Adrienne said. She took a long breath, letting the tension ease just a fraction. "And the civilian casualties?" "Lower than we feared, thanks to the early evacuation orders. Still, too many didn't make it," Weaver replied, his eyes downcast. Adrienne placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did well today. Everyone did. It's hard to see it now, but we made a difference. We protected more than just this planet. We showed the galaxy that the Zorath can be beaten." A small, bitter smile crossed Weaver's face. "Never thought I'd live to see the day. Humanity standing as the shield for other worlds. It's ironic." Adrienne gave a grim chuckle. "Yeah, we used to be the ones needing protection. Now we're the ones holding the line." A sudden chime interrupted them, an incoming broadcast. Adrienne tapped her comm, and Marlowe's voice came through, sounding almost celebratory. "Captain, you'll want to see this. Patching it through to your visor." A holographic display appeared before her, showing a transmission from a news network within the coalition. The headline blazed across the screen. "Humanity leads unprecedented victory against the Zorath. Nira saved." The report detailed how the combined human and Vendarin forces had not only held off the Zorath armada, but forced them into a full retreat. Scenes of grateful civilians, cheering Marines, and damaged but resilient warships filled the broadcast. Adrienne's image appeared on the screen, labeled as the Defender of Nira. Weaver let out a low whistle. "Guess you're famous now, Captain." Adrienne just shook her head, a mixture of pride and sorrow in her eyes. "Fame doesn't bring back the fallen. But if this shows the galaxy that we're willing to fight, that we won't let tyranny stand, maybe it's worth it." She closed the broadcast, leaning against the cracked railing and looking out over the battered city. Somewhere among the ruins, civilians were beginning to emerge, cautious but hopeful. Children clung to their parents, and weary soldiers shared handshakes and solemn words of gratitude. Marlowe appeared at her side, giving a weary salute. "Admiral Reth's requesting a full debrief. Wants to discuss forming a permanent defense alliance. Looks like our little stunt here shook the galaxy up." Adrienne couldn't help but smile faintly. "Good. Let them know humanity isn't just a story about survivors anymore. We're protectors now. If anyone threatens the innocent, they'll know who they're up against." Marlowe grinned. "Hell yeah. We made a statement today. The Zorath will think twice before pushing their luck again." Adrienne didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked up at the sky, where the last remnants of the Zorath fleet vanished into the void. The fight wasn't over. Not entirely. The Dominion would regroup, rebuild, and likely seek revenge. But this battle had proven one undeniable truth. Humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. They were warriors, defenders, and allies worth standing beside. As dawn broke over the ruined city of Nira, painting the sky in hues of red and gold, Adrian took a long breath and let herself feel a flicker of hope. They had stood as the final shield, and they hadn't broken. She knew there would be more battles, more sacrifices, and more pain. But for now, they had won. And as long as humanity stood united with its allies, the galaxy would never forget the day they made their stand and refused to bow to tyranny. With a resolute heart and a fierce sense of purpose, Captain Adrian Cole turned from the shattered tower and prepared to lead her people into whatever challenges lay ahead. Because that was what humanity did. They fought, they survived, and they defended those who couldn't defend themselves. And that was the legacy they would leave behind.